Okay, we're going to go into this teaching, Have the Mind of Christ. We're talking about philosophy. Philosophy is the study of ideas. It means the love of wisdom. Wisdom is the loving application of truth, by the way. That's the definition of wisdom. The loving application of truth. You can say the truth to your wife at the wrong time, in the wrong way, about how she looks today. It's not loving, and the timing wasn't right, and she usually say, your timing's bad. And so you weren't very wise. Wisdom is the loving application of truth. We are commanded to be wise. Okay, we need the mind of Christ. Let's look at some of this ideas behind studying philosophy. A Christian education, or a biblical education, I should say, has four objectives. At least I've given a list of four here. One is to promote critical thinking. We need to teach people how to think about thinking, how to think about the environment, politics, law, economics. Another aspect of it is cultivating a hunger for truth. I mean, I would love to have another 100 years of life to learn more about chemical engineering and space travel and mechanics and, you know, just the amazing thing. I don't know hardly anything. I mean, would we have 1% of all knowledge? Probably not even that. I wouldn't have 1% of carpentry knowledge, let alone some of the other stuff. So truth is marvelous. And we're living on earth at this time. We've discovered some amazing truths that people 100 years ago didn't even know existed, like flight. Sit in a jetliner drinking tea at 39,000 feet at 500 mile an hour. Who would have thought of that 200 years ago? Nobody. Amazing. Get on the internet, make a video, send it to China that instant. FaceTime somebody, and you could be talking for free across the world to your grandma on your watch. I mean, come on. Knowledge, we're just touching the tip of the iceberg of what God has put in creation. We have no idea. We won't get to see it all because we're corrupted, fallen, and this universe, God will make a new heaven and a new earth. So, but it's amazing. So we need to have a hunger for truth, all kinds of truth. We shouldn't shut off the questions to young people. They ask a political question, say, you know, that's an important question. I don't have all the answers, but let's see, how would we go about answering that? So I want to put it to you, look, I don't know everything about chemical engineering. I know very little. I don't know almost anything. But I know that the information and truth is available. And I can go to a library and study such and such a professor's book, and I can see some truths there that have been tested by the scientific method over and over. Some of them I won't accept, like, and all this came from nowhere. I'll go, well, no, that's not true. But hey, I understand H2O is water in chemistry. So, you know, I can learn truths. So we need to be people who love truth. We need to realize there are fortresses out there that need to be destroyed. I'm sorry to say we live on a planet that's at war. It's at war with God. And that means it's at war with you. Jesus said if they hate you, it's because they hate me. It's not you. So there are fortresses out there which are chunks of ideas that are dangerous, deadly, and cause destruction on earth. We need to destroy them, and we need to teach a comprehensive biblical worldview. We need to teach our children, ourselves, everyone in the church, out of the church. You know, I remember going to Indonesia a few years ago when we started going there. It was more than a few years ago now, and we started running some seminars on this for Christian university professors. There are at least 30 Christian universities that use the name Christian, like Maranatha Christian University in Bandung, 12,000 students, bigger than Trinity Western, okay, in the middle of a Muslim country that God has placed there. And you go, my goodness, how did this get here? Well, because God is bigger than the church in Canada, right? Much bigger. He has moved outside of this country. We could shrivel up. 4% of Canadians are Christians. 4%. It's pathetic. Pathetic. We have moved so far away from the foundations, it's scary. And you go to these countries like Indonesia, 30 million Christians. You kind of go, ooh, I thought we were the center of the world. No, we're not. We're not. The torch is passing from white people to non-Western people. 85% of the church is non-Western now, African, Asian. God is moving in his purposes with or without you. So we need to teach a comprehensive biblical worldview. And here's just a little picture. If the circle represents areas of knowledge, and then we're looking at these 10 areas in our book: sociology, psychology, history, etc. The original university, by the way, we'll start with this. God is the source of all truth. He's truth in philosophy. What's the truth of history? What's the truth of psychology? What's the truth of sociology, politics, economics? So God is the source of truth. Jesus said, I am the truth. Nobody's ever said that. No, not Buddha, Muhammad, Krishna, nobody. Jesus Christ is the only one who said, I am the way, I am the life, I'm the truth. I mean, that's pretty darn amazing. If he isn't, he's a nut. Or if that's true, there's your answer to human existence right there. So this would be a biblical worldview. You have information, you have truths, sociology, what is the family, politics, how should we structure society, psychology, what is human nature. You know, we get our information from God through the scriptures. And this was the model of the original university that was started in the 12th century. The university, uni means unify, veritas means truth. University was a Christian idea. The first one started in 1052, by monasteries. Okay, the university was a Christian idea. To unify, to have a place to go and teach all the truths. Because you don't have time on a Sunday service. You got 1 hour. How are you going to cover politics? How are you going to cover all these topics in an hour on your Sunday service? You're not going to be able to. So God birthed a university, uni veritas, to teach these things. And it was started by the church, not by the animists, not by the Muslims, not by anybody else. It was started by the church. And God was the center, and all these disciplines became departments, and they all had their reference point as God. Christian universities were started all over the world by Christians, and they were to unify truth. Now, they hired professors. Over time, professors were Christian. You go to some of these Christian universities here, won't name names, or in the States, and they're Christian people who are teaching, but you find out that they're teaching a kind of Marxism in history, that the Western world is the most evil thing, and we're colonialists, and the residential schools were all bad, and we should just stop logging and ban those pipelines because whales are dying. So what's the point of history then? My question is this: what does God want to see on planet Earth? Trees or civilizations? I repeat, what does God want to see? Is he happy that there's a civilization here in Canada? Well, you know, we've got an airport. Vancouver's taken up a chunk of land. Montreal, maybe this is all upsetting to God. And all he wanted was just leave those wolves and those moose alone. I doubt it. Because the purpose of history was to fill the earth, subdue it. And subduing it means this is a good thing. God's pleased with his projector and computer. He's thrilled with the airplane. Although, just think of what's coming. We have no idea. We might be flying without a plane if we don't destroy ourselves first, and God doesn't come back first. Anyway, the amazing thing is that the Christian university was started to unify truths, and they began to hire people who had Christian hearts but not Christian heads. And so they were teaching other mixtures of ideas that had no biblical reference point. So they took out God. And most universities today are not Christian, so they have simply put atheism at the core, and all the disciplines largely teach atheism, and that's what you're going to get. That's not a biblical education. But Christians can go there, because it's dangerous to go to a Christian one if you're listening to professors who aren't biblical, or you don't know how to measure them. And I've been there. I've sat under them, not Christian ones, but atheists. And now I know how to measure them. Oh, I see. Oh, this is a Marxist. Okay, I got it. Oh, this one's, postmodernist. I can see that. So I can sit there and listen to anybody and say, I accept that idea, but those 6 are bad. This is a good idea. Those are false. That's good. I can watch the news and understand partly what they're saying and then what the truth might be. So, okay, so this is the model. So here is a statement I love. Harry Kahn, and I'm going to mention his book, which is absolutely fantastic, Four Trojan Horses by Harry Kahn. Just a great book. He said this, the greatest problem we have in the United States and Canada, it's not ignorance. It is that people believe things and concepts that aren't true. Think about that. The greatest problem nations have is not they don't go to school and learn math. That's part of it, but that they already believe things such as Hinduism, Islam, atheism, Marxism, that aren't true. So it damages them, and it damages civilizations. Some ideas the Bible presents, it states, I should say, are demonic. In Matthew 16:22, Jesus turned and said to Peter, "Get behind me, Satan, for you are not setting your mind on God's interest, but man." So this is an astounding statement from God rebuking a human, not because he's human, but because he has ideas in his head that aren't biblical, and furthermore, they came from the devil. So you can have ideas in your head that came from the devil, such as abortion's everybody's right, and it's either that or it's a completely fleshly origin, but certainly the global impact of abortion, I would have to say it was an angel that spoke to that judge in 1973 and said, "What's a person?" That's what I think. You could not have this level of incredible slaughter. 100 million a year? It's like unbelievable, worldwide. Okay, so Jesus rebuked Peter, not as a person, but for the idea that was in his head, and said, that is Satan right there. Peter must have been stunned. What? Who, me? No, Jesus is talking about the idea you've got. Get behind me, Satan. Here's Mr. Marx. And here's one poem that he produced called Pale Maiden. See what you think of this. The hellish vapors rise and fill the brain till I go mad, and my heart it utterly changed. See this sword, the Prince of Darkness sold it to me. From the book I Believe in Satan's Downfall, Michael Green. Well, I would say he had an experience. And this man is responsible for the sum total of at least 170 million dead in wars from 1917 to 1990. And they're continuing today under the Communist Party in North Korea, China, and Russia, meddling in nations around the world like Syria, Iran, everywhere, North Korea. We are still facing the repercussions of Mr. Marx, and cultural Marxism is in our campuses and in our courts, and destroying from the inside. The very people are sensing. You can talk to them now. They go, I feel like we're losing Canada. People say that now. I feel like this country's going down. Do you ever get that sense recently? It's very recent, but there's something powerful happening. You can't chop down all the legs your chair is on without the thing toppling. And they're chopping out the economics, the moral, the legal. Powerful. Okay, the Bible tells us we are to demolish fortresses, for the weapons of our warfare are powerful for the destruction of these fortresses. We are destroying, what are these fortresses? Speculations, ideas, every lofty thing raised up against the knowledge of God, and we are bringing every thought captive to Christ. So that is what we're doing on earth. We are to bring our own thoughts captive to Christ. You should ask yourself, is this a biblical thought in economics? Set up a cupboard in every area of your mind for economics, law, politics, etc., and start filling that with truths. The Bible also says in Ephesians 5:11, do not participate in the unfruitful deeds of darkness, but instead even expose them. So that is part of the Christian job. We are not to be silent and just bow before Caesar. Even if the court is telling you, you will do this, there's going to come a time when you have to say, I'm not going to be silent. I'm going to expose this. There are people fighting now. There's this one father in BC who's been threatened with punishment by the court if he even mentions his daughter by her name. And anybody who publishes that story will be charged because the court said, you're not even allowed to talk about that. Says who? Says who? Says the court? Is the court right? This is what it comes down to that they don't teach you at law school. They teach you how to do the law, but not question the law. So the Christian question is, when is the law right? It can be right many times. You shouldn't kill your child, you shouldn't speed, you shouldn't do this, that. But there are times the law is not right. Slavery used to be legal. Killing Jews in Germany was legal. Things can be legal, but wrong. And abortion is. Aborting babies while they're being born is beyond comprehension if you're a farmer. And you're not allowed to kill a horse in Chilliwack. If you did that to a horse, you'd probably get charged by the SPCA, right? If you chopped your cat into pieces, you would be charged. But you can chop a baby to pieces at birth in this country. I can't stand that idea. I don't want to pay taxes for that. Let's defund the taxing under health care. This is called health care. It's not healthy for any baby, not healthy for society. Why are we paying for that? To get that out of the taxation system. You think the government will ever do that? No. This next election is going to be for the Conservatives choosing somebody in that party who totally agrees with abortion. They've already done that. Right? They've already chosen, well, at least I've seen at least one person who's heavily favored for this next Canadian election for Prime Minister, who is completely on side with same-sex marriage, abortion, gender ideology. Where does that mean? That might mean the end of Conservatives in Canada, the end of the party anyway. So interesting times as we see these ideologies become activated, right, in politics and law. It's right before our eyes. Okay, but we are to expose them. It's just what I did. I just said that. Let's look at some of the ideas in shaping the West today. One of the biggest problems is in the Christian mind, and it has to do with something called Greek dualism, the idea that only some parts of life belong to God. This is one of the biggest hindrances that I've been speaking against since the 80s, when Christians were simply wanting to deal with the spiritual world and not the secular world. You ever heard that word, secular? That's secular. I just want spiritual things. Okay, so let me tell you, is this a secular sweater or a spiritual sweater? What is more spiritual, HP or Mac? What's a more spiritual color? Blue, black, green? Is this a secular color? See, those questions don't apply because they're not meant to be used that way. So this idea of the secular sacred domain has kept Christians out of politics because they think it's more important to be in church. That's where the spiritual thing is. Where's God? He's in church. No, he's not. He's everywhere. God's everywhere. Has he ever left the room? He hasn't. He can't. If he left this room, we'd be in hell. Okay? God don't leave. By his spirit, you got oxygen here, you got God. He's greater than oxygen, right? God's got to be greater than oxygen. You're breathing, so hey, guess what? Say hi to God. He's omnipresent. Am I right there? So we don't bring God in, down, anywhere. God is omnipresent. That's one of the basic doctrines of the Bible. So you're never away from God. Morally, you can be. Relationally, you can be. But physically, you can't. You can never get away from God. So the Greek dualistic idea has led Christians to avoid politics because they believe it's worldly, it's secular. And they believe the world is run by the devil. And the devil is so great that one day he's going to take over everything and it's all going to be taken over and we have no hope. Where'd you get those ideas? Oh, well, that's one view of the end times. The end times, we're going to talk not right now about that. But guess what? When we get to history, thankfully at the very end, we're going to talk about eschatology. What do you think the world's going to look like when Jesus comes back? Restored or destroyed or part of this, part of that? Are things going to get worse and worse and worse, or could they get better and better and better? When you go to the doctor, do you want your medical condition to get worse and worse and worse, or better? Who says better? Ah, so you believe that things could get better. When you take your car to the mechanic, do you want them to get worse and worse and pay him $500 and it gets worse, or do you want him to fix it? Fix it. When you go to the dentist, do you want your teeth to be filled and fixed, or do you want them to get worse and he sends you a $2,000 bill? I want them fixed. When you paint your house, do you want to get rid of the rot and fix it, or do you want it to get worse and worse? You just spray paint over the rot. No, you fix it. We are fixers. And that's because that's part of what God wants. That's why the Western world civilizations are better. There's a dangerous word for me to use if I was at university, but you know what I'm going to say? Better. They're better. If you build on Jesus Christ, your life will be better. If you build your nation on Jesus Christ, your laws will be better. Because if he is the way and the life, then that's the truth. Postmodernist professors would hate that statement. But you know what? Postmodernism doesn't work in the real world. Okay, so let's look at this Greek dualism. Where did it come from? Well, in Acts 17, we read that Paul knew the Greek mindset. He was speaking to the philosophers in the Areopagus. You know, he used to move around and go sit with the philosophers. Yeah, I'm going to go preach the gospel here. You know, he roamed around. He was a tent maker. Jesus was a carpenter. So they used to go out in the streets. They didn't sort of go and hang around the temple. Very few of Jesus' ministry times were in temples. They were always out, right? Wandering around. If you look at the back of your Bible and see where Jesus went, I couldn't believe he could go that far. I mean, he wandered hundreds of miles. Was it just by donkey? Donkey and walking. Incredible. And he was going into all these places. So Paul knew their mindset, and he used an everyday idea to begin communicating. He sought to destroy their fortress, and he successfully challenged and undermined their Greek worldview. So if we go to Acts 17, I won't take the time, but you can go there. Go to Acts 17. Paul goes to the Areopagus. All these philosophers are sitting around. He notices they got statues to all their gods. He said, hey, I noticed you got one to the unknown God, right? So he's smart. He looks at the culture. He sees a doorway to use worldview witnessing, and he's going to ask them some questions to get into their mind, right? He said, hey, I see a statue to the unknown God here. What's that all about? Well, Paul, we don't know. There could be a cousin of one of our gods out there, Zeus or, Aphrodite, and we don't want to offend any god because we know they can come down here and do earthquakes, and they can make me sick, and they can cause, Poseidon can cause a tidal wave, and so you know what? These gods bother us a lot, but hey, we just left that open. Paul said, I'm going to tell you about this God. They go, whoa, marvelous. Let's hear this. Who is it? He said, I'm going to tell you where the universe came from. And you know what? That freaked them right out. Because number one, the Greeks thought the gods lived in a realm above the earth, but that the other realm of the cosmos, the universe, the star systems and everything, was always there, eternal. They believed the universe was eternal. But the gods lived and died, came and went, and could come down to earth and be half human, half horse, could marry a human and have superpowers. So they thought the gods were subject to the eternal laws of the universe. You with me? Okay, so he said, I'm going to tell you now. And they believed that the universe was eternal. It wasn't created by anybody. Paul comes along and he says, I'm going to tell you who made the universe. Well, right away, I could just imagine. I'd love to have been there during that. I would have loved that. I'm going to tell you who made the universe. They would have been absolutely horrified. What? That's impossible. That's impossible. The universe was made by any god, not one of their gods. That's why Paul's going to talk about somebody different. He goes, I'm going to tell you who made the universe. They go, oh, okay. And he came down to earth. All right, we know that can happen, right? The gods used to come down, bother them. He came to earth. Okay. And then he died on a cross for you. What? They go, what? If you read Acts 17, they go, this man is an idiot. This man's a babbling fool. I'm getting out of here. Others believed. So he introduced a concept that shattered dualism. The idea some parts of the universe are spiritual, where the gods live. Everything else is natural, not God ordained. You get me? That's dualism of the Greeks. Paul shattered it in Acts 17. I'll tell you where the matter of the universe came from. God. Boom, he unified everything under God. God made everything. And he came down and died on a cross for you. I mean, Paul blew away their dualism, and they didn't like it. Some wanted to crucify him probably. Others said, I believe. So what are we doing with this dualism today? Well, dualism today, life is viewed in two completely separate realms. We got the heavenly, earthly. You hear Christians talk about this all the time. Everything of heaven is good, earth is bad. Spiritual, worldly. This term, spiritual worldly, again, is setting your brain up into two categories. What's a more spiritual computer? What's a more spiritual color? It doesn't even make sense to ask the question. You shouldn't be trying to answer it because it makes no sense to even ask it. So when Christians start asking these things, what's the more spiritual music? Oh, what, drums? No guitar? I mean, harps? I mean, you get messed up. What about spirit, body? The spirit's good, the body is bad. Well, here, I'm going to drink some liquid. This is for my body. It's not going to help my spirit at all. But anyway, body, we need the body. God gave us a body. That's how you live out the things of your spirit. You have to have a physical part that can move and do something. And thankfully, he gave us taste buds. Sacred, secular. This is the biggest catastrophe in human Christendom history. Is that some parts of life are sacred, like the church, like maybe Christian school, family, but everything else is secular. Government, law, sociology, universities, institutions, economics, all secular, all worldly. Oh, so I was told not to think about those things when I was a young Christian. That's what happened to me. Are we telling people today this? I have the key. Are we telling them? We shouldn't be. I was told that. You shouldn't be going to university. You shouldn't think. And I had this schizophrenic view of the universe, that the devil ran everything. So I don't know if I should get on the bus. He might kill me. Can't fly in that plane. He's running the post office. That's why those letter was late. Wow, you become a schizophrenic. How much, what can the devil do? Only what God said he could do in the Bible. Nothing. Unless people accept the philosophies he brings through angelic visions. He has set up a billion people worshiping cows. So the devil hasn't got the absolute power people think, and he can't be in two places at once since he has to fly, since he's an angel, right? He's not a spirit, he's an angel. So you just imagining if you think he's in Chilliwack and Vancouver at the same time. Besides, what can he do? Except visit and give people nasty ideas. That's what Jesus said. Get behind me, Satan. I see that idea in his head. Get out of there. I believe that happened to Marx. All right, so sacred, secular, and this idea that, well, scientists have the facts. We have religion. We just have values, but we don't have truth. This is a terrible dualism. No, either what the Bible says are factual, history, morality, human nature, sociology, or they're not. It's not a case that the Bible is just values and science will give us the truth. No, the Bible speaks into areas science claims, like where did the universe come from? Who are we? What is an animal? Where did molecules come from? So those things. All right, let's look at a couple of philosophies. I'm going to list a bunch of them. We're going to have to zoom through. Probably the most destructive one is naturalism. The idea that the universe came into being and is governed by only natural causes and forces. This philosophy dominates the educational domain today through the teaching of macroevolution in science. Macroevolution is that everything evolved out of that one beginning. Where did the information come from? See, this computer has information through the program that allows that thing to project up onto here. The information was put in by an intelligent human. The machine does not generate its own information. All living things have information, all matter. Information is what guides the thing to work. Just look at a duck. Just look at a Canada goose flying south, a fish swimming up the river. Just look at the way all bodies, your body is full of information. Your white blood cells fight disease. How does it know that? you have white blood cells that are killers, that kill disease. And if you didn't have those, you're dead. Because the first little infection you got in your finger, there's nothing to stop that infection from killing your body, except there's a whole army of white blood cells that somehow there's information that goes to those white blood cells to attack the germ in your finger. Well, you figured that. Do you think that just happened? I mean, that's just one thing. Your body heals itself. Medicine just helps your body heal itself. Okay, so naturalism is the view expressed by this professor at Cornell, who is, now somehow I've got a little bit out of whack here. Can that come over that way? Oops, am I not doing that right? Oh, but this is the projector's gone. No, something on the level. It'll come back. Let's just leave it there. I've twisted the screen. Okay, let me summarize my views on what modern evolutionary biology tells us loud and clear, and I must say these are basically Darwin's views. There are no gods, no purposeful forces of any kind, no life after death. When I die, I'm absolutely certain I'm going to be completely dead. That's just all. That's going to be the end of me. There's no ultimate foundation for ethics, no ultimate meaning in life, and no free will either. Well, he seemed to believe in free will. He was speaking. He believed there was meaning because he wrote that piece and it was trying to express meaning and purpose through it. So he's contradicting himself, saying there's no purpose, which is a purpose. There's no meaning, but he expects you to understand what he said. And on and on. No free will, but he's written that freely of his own accord. Okay, naturalism has led to areas like this in our country, whereby the legal definition of marriage was changed by amending outdated moral views left behind by social evolution. So what we see here is outdated. The term outdated moral views means that morality is evolving. Morality is changing. This is an evolutionary view of morality. Killing someone is never going to be outdated. The 10 Commandments have not been seen to be outdated for any civilization that supplied them. Do not steal, do not murder, no theft, no lying, no coveting other people's things. So this idea is an atheist naturalist conclusion that morality is outdated and it's got the Marxist flavor. Social evolution is now causing us to leave. This was in 2003. This came out in a paper in Surrey. This is as real today as it was then. We are living in this time right now as this has been applied. All right, same-sex marriage is one more step in the evolution of relationships. So we see the atheist worldview come out in the media all the time. You just got to be tuned in to see their logic, you see. We need to move into same-sex marriages because we're evolving. We're evolving as people, and we had that old Christian idea from way back from a book that was written a long time ago. So all that mentality is evolutionary. See, what was long time ago must be now altered because we're moving forward. So that's why they call themselves progressives. We got to leave behind all those old ideas. We used to think it was between a man and a woman. Now we know marriage is free and open, can be whatever you want. See how that works? We are we are here. Absolutely living in this era. Humanism is the belief that human beings are the product of blind evolution, that man's happiness is the highest value. So humanism's a philosophical, religious, and moral point of view. And according to John Dewey, humanism, here in humanism, are all the elements for a religious faith. It remains to make it explicit and militant. So humanism is a philosophy. By the way, philosophies have an ism on the end, ISM. I don't know if you notice that. Marxism, evolutionism, humanism, naturalism. Okay, so you can take a word, and that's what's happened. People take a word like female, feminine, and make a philosophy out of the feminine, though, then you're in trouble. Feminism. So what is the philosophy of feminism? Well, it depends if you bring a bit of Marxist to that or you bring a bit of lesbianism to it to mix it up a bit. So feminism is any philosophy is going to prioritize that thing. So naturalism, the philosophy that everything's natural, will be taught as the foundation of science. Feminism puts the female as the most important figure. So, of course, we've got to rewrite the Bible by feminist writers so that we can take the maleness out of God and have a more female-sensitive deity. Feminism puts females out of order. Or take nationalism. We live in a country that's Canada. Nationalism takes the nation and makes it the most important. But what about the individual? Should I become nationalistic like Adolf Hitler and his party preaching? What about things like evolution, like environment? There's nothing wrong with the environment. We want to be stewards. We want to have clean water as far as possible. But environmentalism puts the environment out of order and it puts it at the top of the pile. So now we must stop pipelines, stop mining, stop oil, stop ships in the harbor, because after all, animals will die in the bush. So the environment is not something to be subdued, which is the Christian model. I don't have a problem with a mine. I don't have a problem with natural gas pipelines, as long as we've done it as responsibly as possible. But you have to have them. If you like your airplane and a warm room to have a lecture in, what are you going to heat it with? How are you going to get around? How are you going to eat? You're going to have no fuel, no car, no telephone, no anything made by oil products. This is not possible. So it's a utopian, it's an evolution, it's environmentalism is a worshiping of nature. Now, our philosophy is theism. God is the top of the pile of all values, and we rank everything below God. So I can put the environment in there. So am I going to make the environment number 2 under God? No. I'll fight abortion first. So moral values to me will trump that in terms of, so where will I place the environment? Well, it might be 14, it might be 6, it might be 49. I've got to rank values according to what the Bible says is the priority and according to how he calls them. Relativism is another philosophy. It's not the philosophy of your relatives. It is the philosophy that there's no absolute truth. Truth is determined by a person's culture, ethnicity, gender. So relativism says what's true for you is true for you. What's true for me is true for me. And the problem is that if what's true for you is true for you, then how is it possible that there's truth at all, since truth is relative? So if somebody says there is no truth, then they are contradicting themselves. So relativism is a contradiction. It's stating a truth that there are no truths except that everybody has their own, which is a universal truth. So relativism collapses when it's exposed. Canadian tolerance has become a national ideology. This is relativism. This was Jerry Bowler. Being tolerant today has not only turned into a rationale for allowing anything can go, but has been used to ghettoize religious people for daring to be different. So what's happening today? Relativism is being forced upon us. You cannot have your values because others have theirs. So they're allowed their values in their gender identity and their sexual practices. You can't have yours because you're a bigot if you have yours, but theirs are okay. This is the power of relativism, to force you away from any value. But in going from yours, you end up being in theirs, promoting that value system. There's no neutrality in values. And philosophy proves this. So you're going to have to live by some values. And by abandoning biblical ones, which a lot of people are doing in this political pressure, they're taking on other values which are anti-biblical. But there's no such thing as neutral values. Relativism, as explained by Michael Ignatieff, there now demands for equal rights have also become demands for approval. This engenders a coercive culture of ritualized, insincere approval, so that political correctness has become a new form of moral tyranny. So now we are no longer simply observing other cultural practices of the LGBTQ community or transgender community or any other. We are not simply to just tolerate that. We have to celebrate it. We have to, if you're a prime minister, you've got to march in a pride parade now. If you really want to show you celebrate diversity, you've got to march in that parade. And if you don't, you're a bigot. So guess what happens? It's coercive. You don't have a choice now because they've defined this idea. It's no longer approval. You are supposed to celebrate diversity. Well, that's everything except your values. I don't see the Prime Minister celebrating diversity in a church or going to other places. So this is very selective. It's driven by a philosophy, postmodernism, and it's pushing relativism, but it's not really relativism. It becomes moral tyranny. You will have this view, march in that parade, or you're morally a bigot. You see that coming out here? Unbelievable. And they're too afraid not to do it. And the RCMP have to raise a rainbow flag, but they won't raise a Filipino community flag or a Greek one. And I happen to have some relatives who must have come, well, they came from England. I should tout my oppression I had from the French attacking England. You could go back history here, but where are the other communities the RCMP are celebrating? Why on earth would they be raising a rainbow flag over RCMP headquarters to single out one community identified on their sexual preferences versus a community based on their ethnic preferences? Do you see the contradiction here, or do you see the political control coming in to force insincere celebration? And that's dangerous. Okay, postmodernism, the idea, we've covered that, no truths at all, since truth does not exist, which is actually a contradiction within the claim. Let's quickly look at a couple of these. This came out in 2003. The new Canada is hip and savvy, leading the rest of North America in the march towards a world without boundaries. This means moral boundaries, and this is absolutely going to lead to the destruction of the next generation. Kids are already appearing in schools here in distraught, psychologically and emotionally damaged states. It's becoming very hard to be a school teacher in the public system because of the nature of these kids coming in from families that are just destroyed. Things are changed rapidly, and we're creating a next generation that's going to do some damage when they get to be adults. Okay, we're going to skip this one. I'm skipping the pastor. All right, this was a court forced a school district in Surrey to put books in the library showing homosexual couples, despite the fact that thousands of people in the district said they didn't agree with this. The court said these books portray reality for those people, therefore they're going to have them. In other words, reality is not what is. Reality is, well, there are homosexual couples and that's reality for them, so we must have all those books in there. And that is part of what we got now with these transgender reading times in public libraries. We've got to expose little children to the reality that some people dress up like a woman when they're really a man, and they put on, I don't know if you've seen some of these drag queen reading times in public libraries. This is part of showing kids the reality of things as they are today. So we live in a challenging era. We're going to come to an end. The era we live in is postmodern. We are going to address some of the philosophies as they emerge, which are regular and every week, but we must come to grips with the ideas that abound. We must learn to identify them when they appear in the media and they appear as a policy in your school district, or they appear as a mandate for the Prime Minister. He's got to take this march, or, you know, we've got to allow the blockade of that street, because after all, there's one group that they don't agree with the pipeline. I mean, some people don't agree. So we have to stop that road because they have a voice. And so they should be able to make thousands of people become unemployed and stop business because, well, after all, they've got a voice. The question is, where's the right place in the democracy to express your opinion such that it doesn't do great harm to everybody else? So we live in a turmoil of philosophical confusion. And sadly, many Christians are all embroiled in this. And maybe some of your relatives, as you talk to them, maybe find out they're angry about certain votes and certain political parties and this person, that person. We need to help them think about it. So what you need to do, before you give anyone an answer, learn to ask them the questions. that will expose their own thinking. So if somebody says, you shouldn't be talking about that, and you say, well, that's interesting. Why wouldn't we be able to talk about that? Probe their thinking so that they can be led to see the contradictions in their position. Do you know what I'm saying there? Yeah, if they're willing to go there. And I admit there are some people who they won't go there. They'll just shut you down. But it's more useful if you can lead them, like where they say you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink it. So if you can lead them to the conclusion that their ideas are going to lead them to, then you might be able to win them back. But Christians are not used to thinking. They've been afraid of the mind. They've been told the mind is evil. I was told that. They're afraid of talking about politics because, well, there's two things we can't talk about at the table, religion and politics. I go, why not? I mean, you want to talk about all things. So we need to be, as parents and grandparents and educators and friends, ready to hear questions, ready to figure out the value of that question, the truth value of it, and learn to ask. And I'll do this next time we get to our next session too. Learn to ask the kind of questions that will open up the discussion and lead them to the place where they have to make a decision. Do they want to be contradictory, or do they want to rethink their position? Does that make sense? We want to lead people to Christ. And sometimes you have to pick the weeds out of their head first before you can get to the heart, right? So that's what apologetics is. Apologetics is giving a reason as to why you believe anything biblical, whether it's politics or sociology. Why is the family, man and a woman married, the best model ever for the human race? Well, because you got a lot of track record there, people. It's nothing else is going to work. So anyway, we need to be able to give good, solid reasons. There's so much material out there, so many good books. Again, I want to just affirm my closing with this one, Harry Kahn's book, 4 Trojan Horses, a great old book, but it's terrific and covers many of the ideas we're facing today. All right, let's close in prayer and we'll end here.